Welcome back and thank you for staying with us in studio on News Check this morning. We are just kickstarting the conversation ahead of the State of the Nation address by the head of state expected this particular afternoon. And this has taken us into looking at the Jubilee government scorecard, what they have been able to achieve. Remember, when they came into power, they promised to implement what was called the Big Four agenda that centered on 4 key pillars. And many have dissected this to see how much ground has been covered and what is left and what the president and his team should do in the remaining few months before his term elapses. And in studio I've been engaging a panel of 4 gentlemen. Dr. Brian Makamu-Lishenga has been joining us via Zoom. Steve Mogaka, a lawyer, in studio with us. John Wanyama, political commentator, and Fred Okango, the Secretary Political Affairs for KANU. And we were talking about the good side before we went for the break. Now we want to talk about the other side of the coin when it comes to the Jubilee government and its achievement. And before we do that, I'd just like to take you to what President Uhuru Kenyatta said last time he was giving the State of the Nation with regards to the Big Four agenda. He said that it is not a project as many may think. It is actually an economic development strategy which he used to organize government and deliver and also to answer the question why in terms of selecting the priority areas. So it's not a project, it's actually a large framework. And he said it's centered on 4 key philosophies. These are the key pillars. And the philosophies touched on liberating the urban poor from poverty of dignity caused by poor housing and inadequate services. It also centered on transitioning young people from being earners of wages to owners of capital, and also building a holistic base of human capital that is food secure and health assured, and also jump-starting a shift from being a country of consuming to one of production. So this centers on the 4 key pillars of the Big Four agenda. Do you think we have been unfair in the way we look at it? Was it something that could have been achieved as an event, considering what the head of state said about it?
Thank you, Serfine. First of all, I agree with the president 100%. Leadership or governments are elected based on their manifesto that they present to the public, and if the public agree with them, then they elect them. That is what is ordinarily expected, notwithstanding other political factors, persuasion. Jubilee manifesto was explicit on certain areas. For example, creation of 1 million jobs, fighting corruption, enhancing public service. But when you look at the Big Four agenda, it was a framework. As he says it is a strategic framework that is like a blueprint that anyone can follow, even successive governments. And that's why we cannot and we should never measure the success of President Kenyatta's government based on the achievement of the Big Four agenda. Because but
that was the big promise.
No. It was never a promise. It was a strategic plan towards achieving his agenda as a party and as a government. Now, the challenge has been, because you alluded to that before, why is it that today certain politicians now are saying the government of President Kenyatta has failed to achieve the Big Four agenda? And let me give you an example. Universal healthcare, the aspect of NHIF, the percentage achievement towards registration or acquisition of the NHIF card, NHIF facility. The other day, the president was launching in every community what we call level 4s. You have seen them towards achieving the universal healthcare. Remember, it is the duty of every state organ to ensure that access to those services is appropriate depending on the nature of that service. That was the law says. But the president made it clear that they would want to see, particularly in the slums, every slum to have a dispensary in the name of level 4, level 5, because provision of services must be taken closer to the people. And he'll be speaking to that this afternoon, because it is one way of devolving services. Number 2, talk about housing. The project of housing has been misconstrued. because people expected that we are going to build those 5 million units and people are going to acquire them. It has been a challenge, I agree. However, the model of engagement, the model of building these houses has been a bit scientific because they have involved partners. We have seen partners. Just drive to Ngara, you'll see them. Drive to Lukenya, you'll see them. So it is coming, and we do expect that people will come after President Kenyatta will acquire that. Then lastly, on the food production, we have also seen, why not for this drought that, you know, is really affecting us, particularly in the Asal areas, the president had a bigger plan in terms of dams. But we know also people have messed up this country in terms of dam construction. We know them. We know people who have basically disparaged the effort by this government to ensure that the success of the Big Four agenda is achieved. They are within the same government. So it is a very difficult balance. You are, as a president, you are trying to give your best, but within your government, the same person who is your principal assistant constitutionally is still fighting the efforts you're putting. So we can't really gauge the Jubilee government based on the Big Four agenda, but we can gauge them based on the manifesto.
Do you agree with that, you know, Mogaka? I mean, the messaging of the Big Four agenda when it was delivered, when the Jubilee government was taking power, was it not supposed to be delivered within the 10 years? Was
yes
it a long-term promise?
Yes and no. Yes, because the Jubilee government had zoomed on the 4 as key result areas, and we therefore expected that by and large they would deliver. But Serfine, the Big Four is an extract from the Vision 2020, rather 2030, and the 5-year, indeed 10-year development plan for the country, which was to be run and implemented by Jubilee government. And with that, they held certain things constant, and certain challenges were not anticipated when all these manifestos and the Big Four agenda were being zoomed into. For instance, who knew that there would be such pilferage of public funds that were meant to execute this development project? Because the grand corruption that has created leakages and deficits in the development budget is a challenge that nobody had planned for. Who knew that COVID would come and ravage the country and the world as it has? So I think by and large, the Big Four was very well thought of, and were the challenges not overwhelming, I think they would have been achieved. Because look at the lofty idea of converting our youth from job seekers to job creators. Look at the level of connectivity of power that would enable, that would power whatever innovative ideas that this youth would be involved in. I mean, the connectivity has been achieved by and large, but were it not for the theft at Kenya Power and elsewhere, which inflate the power bills and therefore make the dream unachievable. These are some of the unforeseeables that the Jubilee government was looking at. And as my our Secretary KANU has rightly said it, where on earth would you, even as a spouse, as a family, one spouse is pushing this way and another is pushing backwards? I mean, look, this has been an extremely challenging.
Now that you gentlemen have pushed me there, I was trying to avoid.
I mean, where? In fact, President Uhuru should be given real accolades.
I was trying to avoid.
Where do you achieve?
And he has been tolerant.
Before I allow it, let's give Wanyama a chance to respond to that. Can we separate, when we're talking about the Jubilee government legacy and what they've been able to achieve, can we afford to separate the head of state and his deputy? Because that is the narrative that seems to be, being proposed right now. The deputy president, he is asking for wooing Kenyans to become the next president so that he can be able to fulfill whatever is left. Can we be able to separate these two, or they come as a package?
I think in one way we can separate them, in another way we can't separate them. Let's look at the first term. During the first term, we had that narrative of the presidency. And you could see the two guys working together. In fact, the person who was running the show, 2013 to 2017, was William Samoei Ruto. When it came to the issue of launching of all those projects, they were being launched by William Samoei Ruto. President Uhuru Kenyatta had taken a backseat. So the person who was literally running the country during the first term was William Samoei Ruto. And the question is, now, if Ruto is the one who was running the country during the first term, was everything done the right way? The answer is no. In terms of inclusivity, if you could see the way even the cabinet composition, government composition, you will realize that the cabinet did not reflect the national look of the entire country. It was dominated by people from some few two communities. During the first term, that is when we had the issue of the NYS, where money disappeared. Look at what happened to Kenya Power. It started during the first term. So, and I think this is what happened, or what was running in the mind of President Uhuru Kenyatta. President Uhuru Kenyatta saw quite a number of things happening, and they were happening in the wrong direction. So he could not come out and reign and say, I'm striking, I'm cracking the whip. Because if he could have cracked the whip at that particular point, the way he cracked the whip during after the election of 2017, then he could have not been re-elected. So he had to take just a back seat, look at what was happening, the way it was happening. I'm
still struggling with agreeing with your line of thought that President Uhuru Kenyatta was not running the country in the first term. It depends on how you see
during the first time, you could see the president saying, you could see them saying the president. We used to have that term of the presidency. And during the second term,
he was still the head of the state.
He was still the head of the state. I do agree with you. But when it came to the second term, that issue of the presidency was scrapped. And you could now see the president saying, my government. He started talking about the issue of my government during the second term. And during the second term, quite a number of things have happened.
All right. Help me here. I mean, what would you say concerning that, the change of tune, the change of tone by the head of state? I mean, can we, I go back to my question, can we separate these two gentlemen, when it comes to looking at the scorecard of the Jubilee government?
If I can go at it, yes, you can separate them, but by and large, by law, they are Siamese twins. They are tied by the hip. And that is why, in the first term, as Ofula has rightly said, the president's interest in the first term was to be re-elected in the second term. And apparently, his deputy's interest was to be self-sufficient for 2022, which informs every move, every decision, every appointment, every strategic funding of his team that was done during the first term. And by and large, each of them achieved what their interest was during the first term, because the president was indeed given the second term. And I think the deputy president was self-sufficient for 2022, and that is what explains why he hit the road in 2017, 2018, with all eyes at 2022. And this discordance, both in the first term, because President Uhuru, did a hands-free approach that President Kibaki had done. And since nature abhors a vacuum, that is how the deputy president defaulted into the cockpit and was the one piloting us during the first term, or so it appeared. And that is why when we are saying that in term 2, the infrastructure and foundation that had been laid in term 1 should have been taking us to a development trajectory that was unstoppable, as initially dreamed about by the Jubilee administration. But far from it, there was an apparent strangulation of all those things, which now made the president, when taking full charge, zoom into the the big four in the hope that it will get there.
All right. So Fred, was this momentum muted after 2017, and at whose expense? Who is taking the blow in this particular equation?
Serfine, the president of the Republic of Kenya, when elected, the constitution provides for what is called the national executive. In the Constitution of Kenya 2010, there is no single word called presidency. It has never been there. And those were glossy words that were used to accommodate political partners in the executive orders. They are not in the Constitution. And in Article 130, the national executive shall consist of the president, the deputy president, and the cabinet secretaries. And in doing that function, when you look at Article 150, the president shall have at least 22, not more than 22 cabinet secretaries, and they shall be assisted by the deputy president in doing that function. And of course, the members also include Attorney General. So if you ask me, did the president incorporate the executive, the national executive, in performing his duty? Yes, because they exist. If you ask me, come second term, is there somebody who was sidelined? Then I will tell you no. Because all these two gentlemen took an oath of office or affirmation of office to swear to protect the Constitution of Kenya. And one partner deliberately, as Wakil has just said it, focused on 2022 and boycotted duty. So, in his job as the principal assistant to the president, he took advantage of that. And now, when you remember in the other time he was talking about the handshake partners, the president knew partners made them not to achieve the big four agenda. Derailed them. Then recently changed tune and said, no. We have done this. In fact, we put billions here. In fact, we, now is taking, is enjoying the successes of the little that the president has achieved and disassociating himself from the challenges that, have been witnessed. So in my view, I think that is a political trick that, the yellow fever fella has been using to evade the challenges.
No, let's be careful. Let's be careful, Fred.
No, I'm very careful.
With the terms that we are using
I'm very careful. I'm just saying,
not to allow you to do that.
I'm just saying, there are certain people, Serfine, in this country that are political tricksters. They tricked the president. They said we are together. Then somewhere midway, they ran away. The president himself told the public in a televised gathering at Bomas that his partner took the baton and started running backwards. In fact, if we were to believe him, because he's the president, then we can easily say that some of the challenges that we are now seeing have been occasioned by his partner now running backwards. So to answer you precisely is that there's no one who was shortchanged. In the second term, when the president realized that to achieve sustainable development, peace was important, he went for peace. And he talked to his competitors and they became partners because he understands that even to grow this economy by a double digit, as they promised in the manifesto, is not achievable if people are doing mandamano on Uhuru Highway. If the business community are locking their business and standing by the road say, we are not going to allow it. If every county in this country is on flames, I think to that extent, the president achieved what he wanted. Anyone who believes that he was sidelined, while the constitution says that, in even appointing the state officers or the cabinet secretary, there shall be regional and ethnic balancing, diversity of people of Kenya. It was achieved, and to his favor. So for me, I strongly believe that in this country, we must be honest.
We must be honest. Dr. Lishenga, I don't know what your sentiments concerning this are. Who should take responsibility for the remaining 3% that was not achieved by the Jubilee administration? I'm using your scorecard. Who should take responsibility of this?
Serfine, did you say the remaining 2%?
3%. You gave them 2% earlier?
Oh, no. Well, I gave them 2 out of 5, so I gave them 40%, really.
Okay, yes. So the remaining 60% that has not been achieved or fulfilled your expectations, who should take responsibility of that?
Well, I take a different view from my brother there, because he is seeming to suggest that the fact that the president's partner in government was not pulling in the same direction is to blame for whatever percentage he didn't give. And then, of course, the opposite of that would be to say that the handshake is to blame. I take a very different view. I think that the president is giving the State of the Nation address because it's the president who's responsible. At the end of the day, it is a president who is elected and is accountable to the Kenyan people for failures, and he's also the one who is praised for successes. So I would say I would put the 60% at the president's feet. But then I would also be generous to the president and say that, government is a very large organization. I think that what has happened with the Jubilee government has been government-wide sabotage by almost all top level government functionaries, whether you're talking about directors in ministries or you're talking about CEOs, like CEOs of KEMSA and such places. I think that a lot of people have failed the president, and a lot of these people are presidential appointees. So, I mean, the buck stops here. It is Richard Nixon who had this very nice bust in his office that was written, "The buck stops here," so that everybody will always know where the buck stops. So I'll put it on Uhuru Kenyatta, the president. And then, if you ask me if I can just delve into the handshake issues and the differences of the deputy president, I think that the initial mistake they made was to create a government which was perceived to be a co-presidency. There is no co-presidency. Honorable Ruto, bring your ministers. Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, bring your ministers. This is the wrong way to approach government. We don't approach government like that. The president should have taken responsibility for all the appointees from day one. So what is happening now, the deputy president is claiming a share of anything that is a success of the Jubilee government and abandoning anything that is a failure of the Jubilee government. So I think in terms of political management, the president got it wrong on that. In terms of whether has the handshake helped or has the handshake made things worse? I think that on the overall, the handshake has done, literally nothing to the president's economic agenda, except for creating an environment that the president should have taken advantage of to deliver his agenda. The BBI for me was a great distraction, was a distraction from the president's agenda.
Okay. Dr. Linda, just to cut you short, now that you're talking about management, there has to be a way in which the head of state is going to manage this transition, because there is still so much to cover when it comes to the implementation of the Big Four agenda. I mean, how should we go about this? Because if it is left hanging, then it just goes under the bus. How should we look at this? I mean, how should we manage this transition so that this Big Four agenda is implemented to the 100% that it was promised?
So, Serfine, I will be blunt. Big Four agenda is not going to be implemented by this government to 100%. It's not possible. We are literally 9 months or so away from an election. I don't see it happening.
So is it a done deal?
Yes, Serfine, this for me is a done deal. Big Four, they can only wrap up what is at 90 or 95% done. But I do not see Big Four agenda being implemented by this government to completion. It is not going to happen. They don't have the time. The president should focus on giving Kenya a peaceful, credible election. That should be the main focus of the Jubilee government now. Can we get a peaceful election, a great transition? That should be his number one priority right now.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lee. I'll be coming back to you shortly. So let's talk about hopeful. Let's talk about inclusion. And I'll take you to the Building Bridges initiative, something that was birthed courtesy of the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. And at that particular time, there was a very powerful conversation around how this was going to form part of the legacies that President Uhuru Kenyatta was going to leave behind, leaving a united nation. And we all know the twists and turns of the Building Bridges initiative and the position of the courts on it, and now where it is. What does this mean for that perceived legacy that people anticipated that could be associated with the head of state? I'll start with you, Wanyama. Is it just, you know, is there something that will still come out of this?
When it comes to the issue of BBI, what I want to say is Uhuru's government has had a problem. And the biggest problem is communication. Communicating to the common man. They are poor at communication. Now, when it came to the issue of BBI, majority of Kenyans thought it was an idea between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Yes, it had quite a number of goodies. It could have benefited the country in one or two ways. But due to poor communication, quite a number of people thought it is something crafted between the two people. And if it could have even been brought to the referendum, I want to tell you this for free, my dear, that it could have been shot down by Kenyans because they never believed in it. They looked at it the way Ruto could put it, that they were looking for an avenue of creating positions for some few people who will be the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister at the expense of the common mwananchi. What could have happened is now that if Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta knew very well that this thing could bring some sort of goodies to Kenyans. All the proposals, they were not supposed to be subjected to the referendum. After the courts shooting down the BBI, what they could have done is they could have gone the parliament way. There are issues like if we talk about the issue of a help loan, giving a grace period of some time. This is something that could have just been taken to the floor of the House, passed, and Kenyans could be benefiting out of it. So if you look at it, it is something that had some sort of political cloud around it. Okay. At the same time, I want to tell you this. President sat down, and you know, President is a human being like another person. He knew very well that we have had the first president being his father, that is Mzee Kenyatta. Then from there, from Mount Kenya, we have had Mwai Kibaki and him as the president. So people from that particular region could not give a presidential candidate who could win come the year 2022. So come up with something to do like BBI. And when you talk about the BBI, talk about the issue of the Prime Minister and say, now someone from our region will sit at the negotiating table and give us something.
You know, I'm actually, you know, going back to that analysis, you're trying to put the dots together for this to make sense. And I'm reading your body language, Fred. If I go into my next question, I'd allow you to let it out. What is it?
You know, Serfine, we must be honest people. And this is where I disagree with my good panelist, Wanyama. I am tempted to believe that Wanyama did not read the bill, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020.
Did you?
I'm tempted to believe. But if he read it, then he was so busy and he didn't read the rationale. And Wakili will tell you in every bill there's the rationale behind that. Now, while I'm not really interested in talking about BBI today, because if anything, it is a matter before court of law, actively. But I want to speak the facts. The issues in that document were issues that were meant to address the plight of the majority of the people of Kenya. And I want to speak an aspect that I expect the president to talk about this afternoon, the aspect of devolution. And not just devolution, how are we going to strengthen devolution? By increasing resources, protecting the penny to the money to the last penny that is going to the devolved counties, and also now adopting the smallest unit of the devolved system as the unit of accelerating development. That is not creating positions. Number two, we have been talking about inclusivity, and that is an aspect of national value, and I expect the president this afternoon to speak about it. In political inclusivity, forget about the economic inclusivity, that we are going to have a sustainable economy for all, pastoralists, even those who call themselves Hausa, were incorporated. Political inclusivity requires that we must now look at our regions as envisaged in the Constitution, regional diversity, ethnic and regional diversity of people of Kenya. But at the top that I mentioned earlier, what we call the executive, there's been a challenge, and we do know that. He has just aptly put it that for a very long time we have seen two tribes in his initial submission. He did say that. So this was a keyword to addressing those challenges. And people, you know, Kenyans are very litigious. They'll always run to court for even issues that they can address. This issue, if you look at the proponents, Raila Odinga and President Kenyatta, people associated Raila Odinga with the PM position that was proposed in the BBI because he has been talking about it and he was one before. Assuming it was not Raila Odinga proposing, it was William Ruto and Uhuru proposing, would the mindset of the people be fixed the way it was fixed when Raila proposed? My answer is no. So in my submission, I say that the challenges of this country cannot be fixed in one day. They shall be fixed progressively. Okay. And that document, I can assure you, the issues in that document were administrative, constitutional, and legislative. As we speak, there are aspects of that document, that bill, that are being addressed in Parliament. And I agree with him when he says you don't need referendum to address the issue of health. The Constitution of Kenya, in promotion of popular initiative, talks of a bill, not bills. And that bill, and that, in his opinion, the Attorney General gave a very good opinion about it and said, the bill shall be submitted as a document to the people of Kenya to choose a yes or no. That opinion is there. But you see, for people to make a choice, you must give them that bill. In that bill, there are so many aspects that would require legislation, administrative action, and even constitutional amendment. So it is within that area that we had that. But lastly, Serfine, there's nothing that is stopping the 200, the 400 plus members of Parliament, both Senate and the National Assembly, in looking at the issues that require legislation, if those issues are good. If anything, they will still undergo public participation. Okay. So I believe that that is an aspect that we can still pursue, and we should indeed pursue it.
All right, thank you for that. Dr. Lishenga termed the handshake a distractor. It's something that distracted, you know, what the Jubilee government was doing. I'd just like to give you a moment to also make your submission, because it seems like now you're making submissions Wakili, concerning that. You know, and I want you to go back to the question I asked earlier. Many people associated the Building Bridges initiative, this baby, if it was going to be delivered, it was going to form a very big chunk of the legacy that President Uhuru Kenyatta was going to leave behind. And we know the status of the Building Bridges initiative right now. It is still pending. I mean, if this goes either way, what will it mean for the head of state and the legacy we leave when it comes to the Building Bridges initiative and the unity of the country that he passionately sought?
Thank you. Let me approach it this way, that President Kenyatta became a president in a backdrop where there was no confidence, or there has never been any confidence in the electoral system, where there always has been post-election violence, and where we were threatened with not having a country. And one of his objectives, especially in 2017-2018, was to try and get a lasting solution to our electoral system. And the only single lowest denominator in all these electoral violence is lack of inclusivity, which pushes people to involve themselves in electoral malpractices because the winner will take it all. And this is the reason why, and I must say, the leadership of this country failed this country, because the reform the President and the Right Honorable Prime Minister opted to initiate was to address that lasting problem that in Kenya we will never agree whenever we do our elections. In Kenya, we will only think ethnically. In Kenya, we will only think about excluding others, especially our competitors. So that is a single malady that I must give credit to His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable Prime Minister for taking bold steps to try and address this problem. And this problem is not legal. This problem is socio-political, because it is on how we are arranging ourselves that is really the problem. And how that system is what finds itself in our constitution, because that is how we have agreed to live. And so far, Serfine, you can notice that what my co-conversant, Mr. Wanyama, has said, that this country is perceived as having been dominated by two regions of this country. It's a perception, although it is more true than perceptive. And because of this, the rest of the country becomes restless and says, I mean, is this how we are going to live? Does our vote matter to other regions of this country? And this is one of those issues that the initiative, through what was later called BBI, was seeking to address. And remember, Serfine, we are in a democratic society, and Article 27 of this constitution makes us equal in Kenya before the law. And before the law includes the Budget Finance Act that authorizes the spending of money in this country. And remember, in this BBI, one very fundamental question was being raised. Why would a constituency having 30,000 people be represented by an MP who is equal to an MP who represents a constituency of 300,000 people? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, and these are among the pertinent issues that create, inbuilt inequalities within our system that bring, the tensions that we are expecting that the leadership of this country were required to address. Okay. So the attempt to push the BBI, of course, failed on account of legalese. Yeah, the legal interpretations of the drafting of a constitution and whatever. And of course, it is in the apex court in this country to deal with it. Whatever way the Supreme Court deals with the BBI initiative, there are issues still living with us. There are electoral challenges still living with us. There is a question of ethnicity, which cannot be sorted out through judicial processes. There is the question of inclusivity that we need addressed by us. And there is also the question of the legislative agenda, because we can't have a parliament and a Senate that cannot stand up and deal with the issues that we are dealing with. Constitution is the last thing to do, but I still say on public television that our legislature has all along been the weakest link in this fight to reform and make this country inclusive, equal, and where people feel that we are the same, and we don't have to look at one another through ethnic lenses. All right. Inclusivity is the key word here. I'd like to bring in Dr. Lishenga onto this particular subject, because he seemed to have he holds a different opinion when it comes to the handshake. And I just want you to come in, Dr. Lishenga, and give us your sentiments with regards to, you've heard the gentlemen and what they've said about the promises that were enshrined in the Building Bridges initiative, even though it took a different direction and we are still yet to know the outcome of what the court is going to say about it. But when you listen to what they're saying, should this conversation be shelved? Dr. Lishenga.
All right, we'll be crossing back to Dr. Lishenga in just a bit, but we are talking about the Building Bridges initiative, this particular morning. Yes, I understand we have him back. Before we go on to another issue, I just wanted you, Dr. Lishenga, to give your sentiments when it comes to the Building Bridges initiative. You've heard what my panelists here have said about the promises that were enshrined in it. Do you think we should shelve this? Okay. Seems like we're having a bit of a difficulty there connecting to Dr. Lishenga. We'll come back to him a little bit later, but we're talking about the state of the nation.
Got you.
All right, I can hear him, Dr. We'll try and fix, that connection with Dr. Lishenga so that we can bring him onto the conversation. But yeah, so let's move, to something else that I wanted us to talk about before we wrap up this conversation. As we expect the head of state to talk about the state of the nation this particular afternoon, a lot has been said about how much ground has been covered. And I'll take you back to initially when we were talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been no time in the history of our country that we've made the level of investment that we have in the health sector as at the time that we reported the first case of the COVID-19. Let's talk about that and how it has transitioned our healthcare system and, what the Jubilee government has done. What stands out for you in this particular aspect?
Thank you, Serfine. I think COVID-19 pandemic was a blessing in disguise because we have seen the measures that the government is putting in place, particularly on digital literacy, and particularly on how to conduct business remotely. And even in health, technology has come in handy. So I want to believe that these are learning lessons. And today when the president will be speaking in the afternoon, the expectation is that what more can we do to ensure that we strengthen our institution, not only by providing money that will see them through this transition, but also providing expertise that will ensure that we have the right people in the right place to do the right job. Number two, in terms of health, we have realized that our health is our wealth. And the majority of Kenyans are just one admission away to poverty in the medical center. One admission away. Because if you look at the types of diseases that our population undergo, the issues that are affecting their health in a big way. It's only that we discovered through these testing of COVID-19. When guys walk those tall, you realize that you have got terminal ailment that you didn't know, and then before you know it, people are dead. We saw that. So it is an opportunity for us to start looking at things. How do we address them remotely? And that's why me as an individual, I am very happy that when the president decides that they are going to have level 4s, level 5 in every village of this country. That is a legacy that we'd want to see the next president do. Take it all the way to the village. Number two, other than that, in terms of digital and technology, we'd want now to see doctors coming on board to do consultancy online, so that I have a doctor in Ouma Bay, but I am in Nairobi, and I can consult and get that service as soon as
telemedicine.
Telemedicine.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you for that telemedicine, because you see, we don't have access, and if you have access, then with the COVID-19, it is limited. I would want to encourage the president in the remaining few months to concentrate on perfecting on what he has done, and also try and offer solution to the challenges of what he has not achieved.
All right, I'll come back to you, gentlemen. Just help me hold a little bit. I want to finish up with Daktari on Zoom so that we can let him go. Dr. Lishenga, I understand that now you can hear us. We are at a point where we are talking about the gains that the Jubilee government has achieved in the health sector, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. I know this is one of the areas that you really specialize in. Probably you can just put us in the know as well. What is it that you find as issues that stand out for you in terms of what the government has achieved when it comes to improving the healthcare system in the country?
Serfine, thank you for that. I think that we have to give credit to Jubilee government for their handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. They did much better than most African countries. They were able to get on top of the problem very early in terms of securing our ports of entry. They have done very well in terms of reporting, data collection. So I give them kudos for that. The initiatives around vaccination are commendable. And I think even the drive by Minister Mutahi Kagwe to insist that you might not access some services if you do not have a vaccine certificate. This is also pluses. So on COVID management from health side, they have done pretty well. They could have done better by involving private. On the other hand, I think that you're asking about what we can do going forward to improve healthcare. I just want to remind all of us that healthcare is a devolved function. I think that we should be moving, in terms of resources, we should move resources towards county governments and build capacity at county governments. It is not right that the national government should be setting up level 5 or level 4 hospitals. This is really a county government function. We need to see it happening at county government level. Where I would like to see national government and the president taking a lead is on two issues. Management of human resources for health. We have a serious problem with management of human resources for health at county level. As healthcare professionals, we have been pushing consistently for a health service commission that is managed centrally so that we can manage promotions, we can manage transfers, we can manage recruitment, we can manage upgrading and things like that. We still insist that Kenya still needs a health service commission that manages its human resources for health. In the Big Four agenda, President wants to increase the number of healthcare workers by 54%. We have today healthcare workers that are still unemployed. They are out here, they have no jobs in a country where access to healthcare workers is still a problem. So even before we get to what my brother is talking about, telemedicine, I would say let's sort out HRH, number one. Number two, on the issue of health insurance, NHIF reforms are vital. Universal healthcare is vital. I like the push by the president to get us to UHC. I think that they have done well, they can do more. Number one, let us move away from a contributory health insurance scheme. You know, people paying per month. This is not the way to go in a poor country, or a country which is still struggling. We have a lot of Kenyans who still cannot access healthcare, and they don't have money. They cannot pay for it. Even if you make it mandatory and threaten them with jail, they have no means to pay for it. We move away from contributory health insurance. Let us move to a tax-based health insurance. Put 1 shilling on sugar, put 1 shilling on salt. You know, I mean, we are good at doing that for infrastructure. We need to do something about healthcare financing. Give enough money to NHIF, let it be tax-based, let Kenyans access healthcare free wherever they are. Thank you so much, Serfine.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Thank you so much for creating time for us this morning. Dr. Brian Makamu-Lushenga joining us via Zoom from Kakamega. We appreciate your time this morning. Of course, I'm informed we are just going to be wrapping this up. There's still so much that we could cover concerning the expectations. But, you know, we've had a very informative conversation.
What the government has been able to achieve and what they can do in terms of a change of strategy to manage the remaining time and, you know, do more for the country. I want to give you a chance to give us your final comments on this. It's just a few hours to the State of the Nation address, and this is your moment to sit in that seat as the head of state and give us what you want the Kenyans to, you know, keep on top of their minds. What is it that is pivotal for you? As we will be listening to the head of state this afternoon, what do you tell Kenyans, Fred?
Mr. President, you have done your best. You are at the sunset days of your administration. As Kenyans, we appreciate what you have done, but we are also cognizant of the challenges that your administration has faced. We encourage you to do the best, but even as you do your best, in doing the report today in the address to the nation of the achievements towards the national values, I would want you to focus more on integrity. I would want you to focus more on sustainable development. I would want you to focus more on inclusivity, because at the end of the day, this country remains for all of us, and there can never be a sustainable development without an inclusive country. There can never be an inclusive country without a country that has got people or leaders with integrity. We wish you the best, and we thank you for what you have done. However, we encourage you to ensure that as we go to the next level or to the next leadership come next year, guide us, but guide us with wisdom so that we are in the right path.
All right, Steve?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to thank His Excellency the President for consistently delivering the State of the Nation address, and I request our legislators to take serious the speech that the President is going to deliver today. And if he has not signed off his speech, I want to suggest to Mr. President to include in his speech certain policy proposals that he needs to put in place between now and the next transition. Because in his government, there are officers that have been supportive and there are officers who are not supportive. And it is time to release the non-supportive officers. So, Mr. President, please indicate to the House that you will very soon be sending a proposal of certain names that you need included in your government to ensure that you achieve the remaining objectives that are possible within the remaining time. I want you, Mr. President, also to assure this country that despite the challenges from neighboring countries, this country will remain secure and that our military will always be alert to ensure that nothing goes wrong.
All right.
I also want you, Mr. President, to encourage those of us who have not registered as voters to ensure we do and make sure we turn up next time to vote for the next president. But Mr. President, don't tell us who your successor is going to be, because Kenyans know and they will do it.
But I hope you have registered, though, because you say encourage us, we who have not. I hope you have registered as a voter. Have you registered as a voter?
Yes, I have registered, and I'm actually a candidate for West Mogrango parliamentary seat. And I hope Mr. President will provide bursaries for these students who have not been getting it because the disbursement from national training is late.
Wanyama, your final words.
I like what Wakili is saying. I think, Mr. President, you are listening to me, and I want to tell you this, that the die is cast and history is made. Today, Mr. President, as you address the country, I want to tell you this. You have done a lot. In terms of security, you have reduced the attacks of Al-Shabaab in our country. Mr. President, you have tried, and you are doing the right thing. However, Mr. President, the common man on the ground, Wanjiku, is in problems. The economy is not performing, Mr. President. Kindly, in your speech, come up with policies that can give hope to the common man that tomorrow life will be better. Mr. President, there is a big problem in our country. The issue of ballooning public debt. We have borrowed a lot. This thing is going to haunt us in the future. Kindly, Mr. President, as you address the nation, tell us how we are going to manage this huge debt.
Thank you.
Lastly, Mr. President, talk to us how you are going to intensify the war on corruption.
Thank you so much. Looks like you need a sit down with the head of state. Looks like you gentlemen.
I hope he's watching. This is a state broadcaster. He's watching.
He is watching. Thank you so much for creating time, gentlemen, this morning. In the words of the head of state during last year's State of the Nation address, Kenya is greater than any individual. Indeed, Kenya is greater than the sum of its citizens. We are a beacon of hope, an icon of peace and stability in a volatile region, and a role model for progressive African African social democracy. This one I have just picked up from a part of his speech that he made last year when he was making the State of the Nation address. Will we be able to maintain this particular momentum, these particular qualities? Will we sustain this? That's now up to us as a country, as we expect to hear from him this particular afternoon. What have we done so far? That is something we need to ask ourselves. My name is Serfine Achieng Ouma, and I've been hosting this morning a panel of 4 gentlemen. Dr. Brian Makamu-Lishenga has been joining us via Zoom. Steve Mogaka, lawyer; John Wanyama, political commentator; and Fred Okango, the Secretary Political Affairs of KANU. Thank you all for creating time for us, and thank you for watching. We are going to be paving way for the Swahili version of the program. Tamrin is coming up shortly, and Kurunzi Mashinani, so don't go anywhere. Do stay for that and much more on KBC Channel 1.